Today we're going to be building an Ethereum mining rig. These mining rigs run mathematical equations millions of times per second in order to extract Ether from the Ethereum network. While you probably won't get filthy rich off building an Ethereum mining rig, you can make a decent amount of money depending on how many GPUs you hook up to the computer. The total cost of building an Ethereum mining rig can range anywhere from around $800 to well over $3,000 depending on the quality of the components used to build the computer. In order to build an Ethereum mining rig, you're going to need a bunch of aluminum angles, some cheap wooden blocks, a power supply unit, a motherboard, power cables to connect all of them, random access memory, a central processing unit. Here we have a heatsink fan, which is used to help dispel heat from the CPU while it's running. These are powered risers. These are going to be used to connect your GPU units to the motherboard while also keeping them elevated above the motherboard to help dissipate heat. These are the graphics processing units, which are really what make the Ethereum mining rig tick. They're the same sorts of cards that are used to play video games, but in this case, they're going to be used to run the same operations over and over millions of times per second. To actually go about building your mining rig, all you're going to need is a pretty basic power drill, a small screwdriver, and maybe 3 dozen self-driving screws. Alright, so first thing we're going to do is we're going to build the computer's case, which is going to consist of aluminum angles cut to size. We have 5 that are cut to 24 inches and 8 that are cut to 14 inches. This one's going to go in the middle. Alright, so once you have your frame, the next thing you're going to do is add the wooden blocks where they'll be mounting the motherboard. Alright, now that your frame's all ready to go, it's time to actually build the computer. So the first thing you'll need to do is mount your motherboard to the wooden blocks you've just screwed in. For this, you're going to want to use a screwdriver rather than a drill so you don't damage the motherboard. So the next thing you'll want to do once your motherboard has been attached to the wood blocks is you're going to want to put your CPU into the motherboard. Being very careful not to touch either part of the CPU. Alright, so once the CPU is placed, you're going to lock it in place with the cover. The next component that you're going to add is the heatsink for the CPU, which is going to be placed directly over it. So you're just going to want to plug that into the 4 pins next to the heatsink. Alright, the next component is the stick of RAM. So once it's lined up, you're just going to pop it into place. Don't be afraid to use a little bit of pressure there. Alright, so the next element is going to be the power supply unit. You'll notice there's going to be all these holes in the back. Some of these are aligned with the holes on the motherboard. So the main power input is the 24-pin slot right here, and then there's an 8-pin slot right here to connect the CPU. Alright, the next component is going to be the powered risers, which are going to be used to connect the GPUs to the motherboard. Because these are powered risers, you're going to need to connect them to a power source. So we're going to take the ends of these cables and we're going to connect them. Alright, now that you got these connected, you're going to drape them over top like this, and you're going to connect the end of the power cord to the power supply unit. Then you're going to want to take these USB connected chips and plug them into the PCIe slots on the motherboard. And now you're ready to connect the powered risers to the GPUs. So like the other chips, you'll notice that each GPU has a little indent on each end, which matches up with the plastic on these. So there's only one way that you can connect these, so you want to make sure those are aligned. Alright, to connect these, there's going to be a hole towards the top of the graphics processing unit. Final thing we have to do is hang these in the space over here because you don't just want them balanced directly on top of the case. The final component is going to be a power switch. Doesn't have to be anything fancy. This is just a little click button. And that's it for the hardware side of things. After this, we're going to move this near a modem so we can connect it to the internet and get the mining software up and running. So we have a 32 gigabyte USB stick preloaded with Ethos, which is an operating system specifically made for mining Ethereum. We have our Ethernet port connected to the internet, and now we're ready to boot up. So the computer will start. You'll notice the GPU fans start to spin, and by typing show miner, you'll be able to see your mining activity. All right, and at this point your miner has started. Depending on how many GPUs you have will depend on how long it takes to mine a single ether. Now that you've got your mining rig up and running, all you have to do is sit back and let it do its thing. It's just going to be running millions of math problems every second and earning you some ether.